our speaker today, Jordan Nunn with Fox Liquid Fertilizer. Jordan, thanks for being here. If Jordan doesn't mention it, I want to. Jordan took classes here at SEC and took a lot of the entrepreneurship courses. So he's a contact and personal friend of Tim Batten, the director that was the founding director of the Entrepreneurship Center. And so he's gone through the program here and taken a lot of the classes, and we're proud of the progress he's made and the business he's built. So, Jordan, thank you.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. We'll keep it pretty light today. I want to tell you a little bit about my background, a little bit of how we got started, why we got started. But you're right. When Tim was the director, that's when I first learned about the program. I was originally on track for the transfer program, like a lot of students. I'm a Lincoln native, and so born and raised here. I'm a father of 3 boys, very energetic boys, and 1 wife. So, you know, I don't know why we leave that part out, you know. But it's, Lincoln is very much home. I'm one of 6 kids, and I'm the only one really left in town. And so it feels like home. Both sets of grandparents are here in town, so it's a great place to be able to have our kids grow up and get to know their grandparents. It wasn't like that for me or my wife, but it's something that I'm glad that we're able to do here. But it's a good home base. Last week I was down in Phoenix visiting a brother, and we can do that because Lincoln's a great place to call home, but it's nice to get away, go somewhere warm for a little bit. And I don't know, I think it was as warm here as it was there that week, but go figure. It's hard to win. But as Stephen mentioned, my name is Jordan Nunn. I run a business. One of the businesses I run, and one of the hats I wear is Fox Liquid Fertilizer Service. The way we got started basically is we were looking to diverse our income. I've always been interested in entrepreneurial things, love business startup, love marketing. I enjoy it. The sales element doesn't really bother me, and I like connecting with people. And so trying to combine these things into something that would be another income was something that we wanted to do. A little background about me, though. Graduated from Lincoln Christian 2005, which I don't know, it feels like a long time ago. I bet some people would say, I guess I'm still young. I don't know. I guess it depends on who you ask. And that's how I know Jim and his family. And so, you know, I can't go anywhere in town without running into somebody I know. And so that's the nice thing. Lincoln might be a little bit big, but it still feels like a small town. Graduated from there, again, was planning on doing the transfer program to study business at the University of Nebraska, doing most of my gen ads and doing the transfer program through SEC. Well, as I started my SEC career, they started developing this entrepreneurship focus, and it was something totally of interest to me. And so after learning more about it, meeting with Tim, meeting some of the instructors, I mean, everybody that I had connected with, and this is a shameless plug for the SEC Entrepreneurship Program, everybody that I was being instructed by were from the professional background. They were lawyers, they were accountants and CPAs, they were people who had real life experience. And the whole point of the program was so that you'd come out with the tools and resources you needed so you could effectively go into a bank and take out a loan if that's what you needed to do, or meet with investors or whatever it may be, so that you could be successful in whatever endeavors you have. And so I credit a lot of my fearlessness towards entrepreneurism, and whatever knowledge I do have, I would credit to my experience here at the center. Took a little bit of a sabbatical and started to get into real estate, property management, real estate. Worked with a real estate marketing company and worked with a property management company, mostly multifamily, and then did a little bit of residential sales right about 2008, which was not great timing. And so I got back more into the property management side of things. But about 7.5 years ago, I just kind of came back to the family business, working with my father. And we work with a company that has a few different product divisions. Their largest division, though, is what we primarily work with, part of because where we're located regionally, but also because it's something that's in the family on both sides of the family, and that is agriculture. So I never would have thought that I would find myself going from real estate to property management to agriculture, but it's something that happened and I really fell in love with. Learning about how things grow, improving systems, doing things that are more sustainable, better for the environment, but also improve the bottom line of our customers. It's something that really checked off a lot of boxes for me, and something that I could really do on my own. So during the winter months, I still do a lot of that. I work directly with producers, farmers, mostly corn, soybean producers, because that's what we grow around here, and there's a lot of them. And so that's what we do. And I really started to learn more about agronomy, plant physiology, soil science, which is amazing because I don't even know how I passed chemistry in high school. I know what I got in my final, and I know what my final grade was, and they don't really add up. But applied chemistry I find very fascinating. And so, again, moving forward a little bit, I've got 3 young boys, very close in age, 7 months, 2 years, and 4 years, and they've got a lot of energy. Someday they're going to have to pay for school. And a personal thing that I have is before I ever teach them how to take out some student loans or to go get gobs and gobs of debt, which I've never been a fan of. That's why I considered other alternatives to just going to the major university. I wasn't looking for a traditional path. I was looking for good information and smaller class setting and such. But I plan on teaching these boys how to run a basic business, how to provide good service, how to communicate, which all seem like really basic things, right? How can a person really get by in life and not be able to communicate? But I mean, we all know that my generation and the generations, that you get a lot of this. And maybe they are listening, but they're not really interacting in the way that we need to be. So it's becoming less and less common, I think, to be able to communicate, to sell your business, sell yourself, provide good service, listen, all of these things that, regardless of whatever a person goes on to do in their life, whatever turns that might be unexpected that take place, you can use those skills. You can always use those skills. So that's part of why we started up Fox Liquid Fertilizer Service when like I said, during the winter months, a lot of the farmers are planning to go to the field. When they go to the field, you don't bother them until after harvest, and so it's very cyclical for us. The turf side of things, it's a lot of fun. It's very gratifying. I've got a flyer, and it just, incidentally, we were in the Strictly business. We have a full-page ad in there right on page 56, which is marked there with the flyer. Just telling a little bit about, you get the real deal today, but it's telling a little bit about our story, why we got started and what we do differently. I come from an agricultural background, but I do not come from a turf background. So in some ways, I don't do things traditionally. A lot of what we do is actually, our goal is fewest applications with best results, results driven, and not upsells. We don't have good, better, best programs. We have the best program we can. You know who to contact if there's an issue. It's not a mystery. It's not an answering machine. It's not that. It's real life people, and that's what we were interested in. I was talking. I'll pass around a few of these pictures here. It's fun to see the transformations. This was actually a rental property. The renter at the time thought he was really doing a good thing, and I think he used Roundup on the whole yard. So he didn't kill all of it, but it killed most of it. So you can see down in that bottom picture. That's what we started with, and it was pretty much weeds by the time I got to it. We scalped it off, and in the picture where it looks like mostly bare soil, that's what was left after the weeds were gone. And then we did a little bit of aerating and overseeding, which we don't do a lot of. We really try to focus in on, there's a lot of people out there who want to mow, edge, and a lot of homeowners who really want to do that stuff themselves, and I'm all for that. We actually have a page on our website, DIY. All the power to you if you want to do stuff yourself, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too with the handout. I've got some resources there for you. But it's fun to see these things. Here's another one that we've got here. This is actually, this property looked identical to the neighboring house, and that was taken November 17th of this year, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's fun to see the transformations. What's fun for me from the chemistry side of things and the technical side of things is we did that with half the amount of synthetic fertilizers that even the university and the resource I'm going to give you tells you that you need. We do it with about half as much of that actual nitrogen. Again, the less that we're spraying, the less we're putting on of anything, the better it is for the environment. Better it is for our water supplies. This is a property here too. I'll pass this around. This was 1 week apart. This was over actually in the Knolls. But it was lawn disease. A lot of times if you see that, and if there's one thing you walk away with, I hope that's this. If you see something like that in your yard, stop watering immediately. It's not drought, it's not dying, and you see it's a really irregular pattern. It's disease, and it's a aquatic pathogen basically that water moves it through the soil. It's always in the dirt. It just doesn't always show itself unless it's the right conditions. And so if you see something like that, give me a call, and I can point you in the right direction. If you want me to do it, I can do that, or I can point you in the right direction of what you want to use to try to remedy that. Again, you know, I hope I can leave you here with some useful things. If you want to, go ahead and pull that flyer here. This is just some info about us, why we choose liquid and what you really get there. But on the back side here, this is more DIY. And there is a bunch of links here, and I'll be posting this on my Facebook page. So if you want to, you have to punch this in, and it could take a little while because these are very, very long URLs. But I'll post this on our Facebook page where you can actually go in and click on these. But at the bottom it says other resources, other sources for information from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, which, if that's where you live, what better source of information? I mean, you can go online and get all kinds of opinions, varying opinions about how I should care for my lawn and how to kill weeds and such. But this is local. This is from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Fertilizing home lawns, soil testing, irrigating home lawns. There's just a variety of resources there. But this tall fescue lawn, most of you probably have a primarily fescue lawn, and so this would be something good to follow. If you are getting something over the counter, bags of dry fertilizer, this program would definitely fit what you're looking for. You're talking about applying fertilizer basically mid-April, then again in May, June, September, and then final in October. Really, I know there's different schools of thought, and I'd be glad to talk with you at length about this, but if somebody tries to sell you on an application, really getting past like November, even if it's nice weather, it's really not, it's just gonna sit there. A lot of it will probably wash off. If we get snow and then it runs off, I mean, think of all the concrete we have in the city, it's just gonna run into the gutters and nobody's gonna be able to utilize it then. That's why we get things like algae blooms and issues with polluted water. You've all seen Holmes Lake. Previous years used to be pretty bad. A lot of that is probably because of phosphorus and nitrogen not being managed very well. But the university, like I mentioned here, now this will all be fertility. They don't talk a lot about killing weeds, except this is very, very good advice. Down at the bottom, September 15th, October 15th, for killing weeds. Believe it or not, a lot of things are counter to what a person might think. One of those being, when's the best time to kill weeds? Fall, typically. Who would have thought? When's the best time to put nitrogen on? Does anybody have any guesses on that? What month?
October.
September, they say. And you know what the second best time is? September. So that's what they say at the university. They literally say if you're going to do it twice, do it again in September. If you only do it twice. That's what they say. Now, it's not always apples to apples. What our program is, and Joe, I know you know, Joe's been a good customer. And a great guy to work with. One of the things, you know, is we only recommend generally 3 applications a year. Usually we see our customers in April, then again in about mid-June, and then in September. That doesn't quite correlate with this plan, and that's because of the type of nitrogen we use. We utilize some special technologies that allow us to be able to do those extended applications. We're out of your hair more, you're in your yard more, you're paying for fewer applications, and so, in my opinion, that everybody really wins. I think Mother Nature wins, your wallet wins, and we can actually service more clients with a smaller staff and setup. So that's a benefit for us and you as well. But basically, I'll give you a quick rundown, and then I'd like to open it for questions, and then we can leave it at that. We don't need to make it a big long thing. But basically, in April, generally what we recommend is the most important thing you could do, if there's a tip to walk away with, is get your pre-emergent down. What that is it's going to prevent weeds, and it's always easier to prevent weeds than it is to kill them afterward, but it's going to prevent those grassy weeds that are close relatives of the grass you do want in your yard. So this is crabgrass and foxtail primarily that you're going to prevent, and you want to put that down before soil temps get over about 55 degrees. So here in Lincoln, Nebraska, you're talking roughly middle of April you want to be shooting for. You get that down at that time and it'll prevent those weeds from popping up in June. So it's hard to go backwards on that. You can kill them, but then you just have dead, ugly, tall patches of grass, and that it takes a while for it to really go away. Then in June, typically is going to be the best time if you have a history of grubs. That's going to be the best time to treat them because of the lifestyle of those grubs. And really, it's not just one kind of grub. It's all kinds. Generally here, it's beetles are actually the grubs that we're worried about because in a certain state, the larva is feeding on the root system, and then you don't know it because it's all going on below the soil until one day your grass is dead, and you can't figure out why. So June would be an ideal time to be doing that, even if you see grubs before or after that time frame. You can always shoot for June. That's my tip there. I already gave you the other tip, and that was with if you see that sort of disease pattern in your yard, call me right away, and we'll figure out what's going on and figure out what a good treatment would be for you if you wanted to do it yourself. But other than that, it brings us back around to September, which again is the best month to fertilize. So it's fun. I enjoy working with the stuff. I enjoy working with homeowners, being invited into their homes, being able to work with them and provide them just a little slice of paradise in their backyard. And I know sometimes the yard is a pain for some homeowners, but others really take pride in that. So I don't take it lightly that we get to partner with homeowners and business owners to be able to help them have something beautiful that they can practically enjoy. So that's a bit about us, kind of why we got started, what our goals are, and what we can do. I know Jim was saying, well, what would be a good referral for you? You know, we don't, like I said, we don't mow, we don't landscape, we don't mulch, we specialize, and we do a really good job at this one thing. So there are some operations, you know, like churches and such, where they have somebody who mows, but this is a niche where they really, it becomes a mystery, weed control and fertilizing and doing it responsibly and effectively in a way that's environmentally friendly. That can be kind of daunting, and so those are the kind of people that we really like to help. But beyond that, can I open it up for questions if we got some time? Steve, go ahead.
Yes. I've got 6 acres of grass I mow on the farm.
Whoa, that's a lot of mowing.
Yeah, it is. And I've noticed, like right now, the lawn is full of little holes. I'm pretty sure it's raccoons doing it. What are they really after, and what's that a symptom of?
Well, sometimes if you see a lot of holes being dug up, they might be trying to get bugs or grubs, but generally you'd see that later on in the season.
Yeah.
Do you think you have moles out there at all? Does it look different than that?
No, I don't think it's mold.
Okay.
In fact, my dog treed a raccoon the other night out there.
Oh.
I just don't know what they're after. Assuming bugs, I thought maybe it was too early for bugs.
Have you done any digging in there at all, just to see what you could dig? You know, if you find yourself in the yard or doing any work, you might see it. Usually, it's grubs most of the time. But again, this time of year, that seems a little bit off. Beyond that, maybe it's squirrels just digging up their nuts again. I don't know. It comes down to one of those things. But I think it's got to be a bug thing. If it doesn't affect, it comes down to what they call integrated pest management, which is the idea of don't use something if you don't need to use something, and that's the whole idea behind why we do 3 applications. We can do more in those single applications than we have to. And part of why we can do that is because we're liquid. You can mix everything. We're not limited to whatever we buy in the bag at a big box store. Because all you get is what's in the bag. You can't custom blend. You know, if it turns out that actually we've got some army worms or some grub issues, and there are lots of kinds of grubs, and so I can pull up one of my handbooks and find out maybe it's not June bugs, which is, like I said, the typical grub that we're treating for, but it could be a different type of grub. So that's probably what's going on.
Tasty one.
Yeah, it must be good. Have you tried them? Or?
They cook up nice.
I bet.
Is there a recommendation you would make for a dog-proof lawn?
Dog-proof in terms of like pet stains, basically?
No more pets tearing it up and sitting with a
Sure.
root, big dog in a little yard.
The best thing you can do in our mix, like for example, and this gets outside of the DIY a little bit, but we use some plant growth regulators, which essentially are naturally derived hormones, like sea kelp. That's a very common source of where they pull some of these plant hormones from. And they stimulate growth, and a lot of that can be subsoil growth with the root system. The more established that root system is, the healthier the lawn's going to be overall when we go into the summer, but also it's going to be harder for it to be torn up because we're improving density. one of the things like on this picture I was showing you, and you might be able to see better since you're in the front row, is color is obvious, right? That's one thing. And a lot of what I credit that to in that particular case, because again, it's not like we applied a bunch of nitrogen fertilizer. A lot of that's actually iron, and using it at the right time. Iron is actually the nutrient basically that gives bluegrass its blue look. If you got bluegrass lawn, it doesn't look very blue. It's probably a little iron deficient. But that's a little trick that we use in June where we don't have a lot of growth, but we want that good color. That's what we do. The big thing on that though is if you look at the density, it's much more dense, and so that's a sign of overall health. So there was a gentleman I was working with, and he's always done his own fertilizing because of some health conditions, and he was just getting up there in age. He just couldn't really do it as much. He couldn't be pushing these, and he's got big hills on his yard too. But the situation with that was he was telling me about how he was applying all this fertilizer and it just grew and grew. He couldn't even fit it all in his full-size dumpster tote for hauling off the grass, which another little tip, I would highly encourage you to not let your grass get too tall, and when you mow it, mulch it. Put it back in there. If you let it get too tall and then whack it off, it's hard for that to break down. But if you can't retain what's there, it's organic matter is what it will become. But he was bragging about this, and I said, I got to tell you, if you hire me and if that's something you want, you're not going to get these big surges of growth because that's not really healthy. That top growth, that's just what we see, and we associate that with health. But what's going on below the soil? And this is stuff that you don't hear a lot of long guys talk about because this comes from farming. This is an agricultural thing. And a lot of the farmers that we work with, and I should have brought a sample of our fertilizer. If you saw it, you'd think it was water. It doesn't taste like water, but it looks like water. And for a lot of the producers we work with, they're very competitive, and they spend all this money on these high seed genetics, and they're looking for, they're looking at how many bushels, how many kernels, kernel weight, density, protein. All these things are factors in farming, and so a lot of that carries over to the turf health. So the more that you can establish that root system, the better. Probably one of the best things you could do is make sure that you're getting a good dose of fertilizer in September, because God designed the turf in such a way that it knows it's going to go into dormancy. The weather starts to change, even if it's a nice September, it knows it's coming. So it's getting ready to hibernate, basically. And it starts storing carbohydrates down in the root system, and it actually develops that root system. So whatever you do in September, you'll see the benefits in May. So even though it seems counterintuitive, that's when you would really want to do that. Does that help a little bit, maybe? There's a few other things a person can do, and they're all things that we incorporate into our program, but it becomes more difficult with the DIY. But fall application.
So is liquid fertilizer cost-wise cheaper, more expensive than granular? And then how do you charge for your service? Is it per application?
Sure.
Or is it a program you sign up for?
Good question. I'll take those in chunks. Basically, I don't do contracts. I don't like contracts. If you like me and you like the work that we do, then we'll keep working together. And I just sent out my email just the other day and said to all my current clients, we'll see you next month. Let me know if you want to change anything. We do our general 3-step plan unless we've discussed a 4th application. And again, that's in kind of rare situations. So typically we're about $10 to $12 per 1,000 square foot of grass, which is certainly higher than most. But we're doing more at a single application, and we're out of your hair more. We don't bill until the work has been completed, and we generally do all of our billing via email. QuickBooks has made that so easy for us, and I pull up my dimensions of yards online. They're probably more accurate than when I walk them myself, honestly. But I always like to lay some eyes on property, see what kinds of weeds we have issues with, because that will affect things a little bit differently. But I bill after each application, no contracts, and that's generally how we do it. Is there another one in there? Do you have another question in there? Does that cover it? John, you had a question?
Yeah. Let's say you want to do some overseed in the spring.
Yeah.
If you put your April app down, does that affect the ability to trade?
Good question. Good question. I run into that a lot. Unfortunately, I run into it afterwards when they say, "Hey, by the way, and here's what happens."
What was the question I didn't hear?
Oh, sure. Pre-emergence in conjunction with seeding in the spring specifically.
Okay.
So we talked about putting on your pre-emergent like mid-April roughly. So the way that those work, there's a few different modes of actions with the way that those pre-emergence work. And long story short, yes, they can have a very antagonistic root pruning is the technical term effect as that seed starts to germinate and the roots try to grow. It just doesn't do well, and it's a barrier and it stays in that top layer of soil. If you go in there and you disturb that soil, you'll kind of break that barrier a little bit, but for all intents and purposes, depending on how much pre-emergent you put on, you probably can't do any seeding until the fall. Now that's good and bad. It's good in the sense that the absolute best time to seed is going to be fall. It is.
Even though some of it doesn't germinate in spring.
True, that can be the case, but if you could get that put on, and again, year to year it can vary, but beginning of September, so you can get it established, so it can be up for a few weeks, it will come back with a vengeance in the spring. And also, if you're applying some fertilizer at that same time, which if you're applying,
This is September.
exactly, that's going to help boost that too, and you'll get better fill-in in those spots where maybe pets have been tearing it up or things like that. You'll get better fill-in in the spring. So hopefully that answers a little bit. There are a few products. There's one product in particular. So if you're doing this yourself, there's a product called Tenacity. That's the brand name, and I don't know that there's a generic, and it's very expensive. It's about $80 an acre is what it runs retail. That's what I pay for it. Because it's the only one really of its kind, and it does not have an antagonistic effect on most fescue or turf type tall fescues that we have in the area. Bluegrass I think it's okay with too, but you'd have to read the label. So there are things that a person can do, but the biggest challenge, and I'm telling you way more than you want to know, I'm sure related to all of this stuff, but I geek out on it obviously. We hit these Nebraska summers. And if you get that grass up in April and it's looking good, and I've seen this happen time and time again, come June, July, it's just like a hammer hit it because it doesn't have the root structure to really sustain it through the heat. So then you end up reseeding in the fall anyway.
And so, just as a follow-up question, if I may, if we were to go with your program, would the best solution be to allow you to apply your April, see what it does, and help with the plants getting rid of the weeds, and then you don't apply anything over the summer, maybe you get burn out, and you
Yeah.
get infections, and
That's my recommendation.
and then
Yeah.
take a look at it, see what it's like in the fall, and that's what goes.
But you know, again, this the picture that I had shown of the rental property, it was pretty patchy come spring. It was still pretty patchy, but it filled out completely. I know there's a lot of leaves and stuff in that picture, but we had only actually been to that property 3 times, from when it was all soil basically, or all weeds to when that picture was taken. So that fill-in with like the fescues, it's pretty amazing. If you've got some bluegrass mixed in there too, like a lot of people do, that really spreads out well. So I would say it's sort of like getting ready for surgery. You want to be healthy going into it, right? So let's focus on fertility and health, and then when we get around to September, see what it means. Yeah.
So I have a staffing question. So you have these, you recommend to everybody that they do, say, a certain application, so you're really busy, and then you don't have another application until several months later. What are you doing with all
Good
these
question.
people?
Good question. Well, we don't have a lot of people. It's mostly me and another guy. And so we're able to do a lot in a short period of time. And there's a certain amount of expertise that comes down to doing that. That was what your other question was, liquid side of things. It's not rocket science, but there's some things a person needs to do. And it's all liquids are not apples to apples, unfortunately. But it is one of those things where where I'm not having to push a spreader, open bags, deal with the dust, all of these other things. It's a matter of pumping product and loading up, pulling the hose and going. And since we do all of our billing online, it's a pretty quick process. And so part of why we chose this route is because of the efficiency. And so I don't have a bunch of people I got to keep busy.
Okay, so you're busy for about a month, and then
Yeah. Yeah, we have a little bit of downtime, but there's always getting ready, new equipment, marketing, getting in front of people and sharing what you're doing. But again, it's one of those things where we don't, you gotta make hay when the sun shines, right? So that's, you focus and you work really hard for those extended periods of time so you can have a little downtime. So you can sit back and reflect and improve and refine, and that's what I love about it, because we do get a little bit of downtime and then it's go time. But we pick up people in between. So someone says, I thought it'd be fine, and then they let it go, or they moved, and they moved to a property that has not been maintained, and they need, so we always get those in between. So we're never really shut down completely until after October and prior to March, roughly, April, March.
And then you switch over to Broken Farm.
Mostly, yeah, and that happens a little bit during the summer, but that's when we do a lot of educational programs. That's why I like the education, I like the technical side of it, because that's a lot of how we approach it with farmers. Not every farmer out there, and not every big farmer is a good candidate for us to work with, but it's those who are dissatisfied with that status quo, and they know that they can do better, they know they can improve from where they are. So it takes that, my dad calls it the gift of dissatisfaction. Not everybody has that. Some people are just fine with the way things are, so. Yeah, go ahead.
Would you talk a little bit about marketing? How are you identifying your customer, and then how are you identifying how to reach those customers?
Sure.
Because let's face it, not everybody in Lincoln is.
Absolutely. Absolutely, good question. That's, well, hopefully we're doing a good job, is kind of the short answer to that. Hopefully we're doing a good job. Big part of what we found is, they're just unserved markets, I think. One of them would be small acreage owners. You get a lot of people from in town that move out of town, and their expectations are way high for what these 3 to 5 acres are gonna look like, right? Well, that's a niche that has just revealed itself to us more and more, and we hope to be able to service that better. A lot of what we found, though, is it's like the gentleman I shared with you that really was proud of how much grass he could grow on his 5,000 square feet of lawn. And I can appreciate that. The point is, he took pride in what he was doing, even if there was ways for improvement. And I don't say that to him necessarily. That's not my place. He was calling me for help, and so I wanted to just forewarn him that's not the focus of our program. But it's people who really would take pride, and they want to partner with somebody who can call me, text me, say, hey, I think there's an issue with this. I think there's a problem with that, because those are the people that are going to refer us. And that's where we really get a lot of our business. Because when I get a call from a referral, I know that's pretty much a closed deal, because somebody told them there's a better option. And so I can educate a little bit, or tell them answer whatever questions they might have. But our focus has been doing a really good job, so people can't help but talk about it. Does that help a little bit? I don't think it's as specific. Was there something else you're getting at?
No, there's some resources, and one of the things that we do at CDR is we also do what we call technical assistance, which is advice.
Sure.
And I just wanted to know what method you were using to target your marketing, because you're a small company. Yeah. How are you targeting your market to reach the people who might actually use your service?
Sure. Facebook's been a good vehicle for us in that regard, as far as outward. I know we can do more. I know we can do a lot more. But that's, what I found is it seems like a lot of other people in the industry, they don't want to do this sort of thing. They don't really want to connect with people necessarily on that level. I thrive on that. I enjoy it. And I hope that shows through in the service and the kind of business that we can do. And so that's part of it. But I also think that a lot of people in the industry, they want to mow, they want to mulch, they want to do everything. And for some really high scale clients, that's what they want. I want to write one check and be done with it, right? For us, it's very specific, and it's more of a partnership. So what I found is it's a lot of people about my age, roughly, and that wasn't necessarily what I expected early on. But it's people about my age that take a lot, maybe too much pride in their yard. I don't know if that's a thing, but that's so it's been interesting to see how that's changed and how it wasn't what we really expected up front. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. More of a testimonial than a question.
You're too kind to me.
Yeah. Jordan didn't ask me to do this, but basically we used him last year. And it was refreshing to us to find, because of the business that I am, which is being proactive about your health and being proactive about the environment, it was really great to find a company that I could do my lawn with that was environmentally responsible. We went from 7 applications down to 3. My lawn looked absolutely unbelievably great last year. In fact, our neighbors even commented on it. And he does a great job. Billing is really easy. Once he gets it, boom, you receive an email, it's taken care of. So I was just really happy with the service that we received last year. And knowing that we're not leaching a lot of phosphorus and phosphates and that type of stuff down into the soil, which basically goes to the rivers and streams and stuff and creates algae and kills lakes and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So great job.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. Go ahead.
Since you're not in the seeding or the whatever, sowing of this seed, there we go, grass, do you recommend a certain grass? Do you work with a company?
Good question.
Because I have a lawn that I've spent way too much time and money, and it's not doing anything.
Sure. Well, it's something that we know we're going to have to get into because we're big advocates for aerating. That's probably the number one thing. If you say, I don't want to spray or put anything on my yard, then aerate it. Aerate it twice a year maybe, because these heavy clay soils, what we're doing by punching holes in it, we're allowing oxygen and moisture to be able to penetrate better into that root system, which those are the 2 things that a root is seeking. Like, I know I hear some farmers, we talk about strategic placement of fertilizer in farming. We say, you want to get as close to the seed as you can. Oh, we'll drip it along the ground, or we'll knife it in next to it. It'll find it. It's not looking for it. It's looking for pore spacings of oxygen and moisture. That's all it's looking for. So it has to intercept that. So in the same way with that aerating, if you can aerate and then overseed, part of what's happening is, yes, seeds going down into the hole there, and that's part of it. But really, we're trying to relieve compaction. And so fall, if you only aerate 1 time a year, fall would be great, and then seeding, and then your fertilizer dose, and you can do that kind of all at once. So you will get better results there. Quality of grass seed is certainly a factor. The big box stores don't always have great stuff. If you pick up, as far as name brands though, if you got Scott's or Pennington, those are going to be 2 fairly reliable, over the counter, easy to get grass seeds. Pennington and Scott's. Those are usually going to have a pretty decent germ rate. There's always going to be a little bit of weed seed in there. But I usually recommend to people you get a hand spreader, Craig style hand spreader, push spreader. A lot of people have one in their garage. Maybe they don't use it or they pay for a service. But you can get it on there, or even sow it by hand, which honestly, it's easier to work around flower beds and stuff doing it by hand. So you can, a lot of times, get better, more isolated control. If
There's a wholesaler off the Cornhusker.
Miller's.
Yeah.
That will also sell retail.
Certainly.
I'm one of these prideful one guys.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
you can buy the 20 pound or 40, God, it lasts a long time.
Mhm.
I had a guy the last couple of years.
Check out
stuck
Miller.
my lawn, and I give him half of it back because he's
Sure.
my overseer.
Yeah.
So, and they have a nice fescue mix
Mhm.
that they use. It seems to be pretty well.
They don't have like lots and lots of options, right? It's pretty specific. So it'd be easy to go on there.
Yeah.
You won't be steered
Yeah.
away. And it will be more expensive, but generally overall,
Not long,
grass seed's
but
pretty
it's
cheap.
Not one time, exactly.
It's cheaper than a lot of other things. Go ahead.
Are you recommending a specific type? Because I know that within recent years, they've been developing just for like Nebraska type weather and whatnot. So it's low moisture, humid. It's non-bluegrass because bluegrass is hot.
It's interesting. I was actually just listening to a radio program about that, and there's different schools of thought, right, on a lot of the stuff. One of the grass varieties, which I think they were actually talking about buffalo grass, which is a lot of what people think of, they were talking about, and these guys must have just been ultra conservative about lawn care. They were talking about what the city maximum height was allowed. They said it was like 36 inches. I'm thinking like, oh man, 36-inch tall grass would not go well in my neighborhood. My neighbors would not like it. And so that's one extreme, right? They never water it. They literally never mow it. When you do, you've got these windrows of hay. You have to start put a sign in your yard. Yeah, you do. So mostly what I recommend is, because the genetics have come so far, it's kind of a long name, but it's turf type tall fescue. You should probably come up with an acronym for that. But turf type tall fescue. it's going to look and feel like a bluegrass, more like a bluegrass, but it's going to be more hardy like a tall fescue. You don't have to know what all that means, but turf type tall fescue, and then whatever you can get that has the best disease resistance, that's what I'd go for. Because we are in a region where we're a little bit transition. We get our hot summers and our cold winters. And so inevitably, and it's not near as bad as it is like down in Memphis or places like that where they get horrible lawn disease. Because anytime someone says lawn disease, it's code for fungus. You got a fungus in your yard. Sorry. It's just like when people say, oh, you got mildew in your shower. It's a nice way of saying you have mold in your shower. It's the same thing, to be honest, but we like to call it different things. But the genetics have come so far that if you can get something that is going to be more disease resistant and mix that in over time, that's a good way to do it. So if you do have a predominantly fescue, a predominantly bluegrass yard, which is generally what you'll find around here, which most are a mix, it will blend in nicely. So hopefully that helps a little bit. You've probably all seen like that wide blade fescue. A lot of that's really a weed. It's really white. It grows great. It's the first thing to be green in your yard and the last thing to turn brown in the yard. And the only way to really get rid of that very effectively is to dig it out or kill it somehow. But they've taken essentially that plant and they've refined it to something more beautiful. And that's what I mean when I say genetics have gotten a lot better. It's out there, yeah. Reputable seed company like Miller, yeah. If they do retail stuff, certainly check with them. I've sucked up a lot of time. You guys want me to grab me afterwards, and again, Steve, I appreciate you having me. So thank you.
Thank you. As a thank you, we'd like to present you with a Focus Suite.
Thanks.
So
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Please don't hesitate to hang around, ask more questions of Jordan if you have them. There's no need to run off. If you've got the time and want to stay here and visit and network, feel free. We're not going to run you off. Our official time is over. But thank you for being here. Hope to see you next week for Brad White. And again, exchange those business cards, get to know one another before you take off, and come up here and ask Jordan more questions. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Nancy. You bet. Appreciate it.